Welcome to Could Be Pretty Cool News, the podcast where we dive into the exciting world of creative entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Casey, and together we'll embark on a journey to explore this dynamic ecosystem from multiple angles, including academia, research and data, community building, and compelling personal narratives from creative entrepreneurs themselves. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we uncover the stories and strategies behind building successful creative ventures. It's time to discover why the world of creative entrepreneurship could be pretty cool. Welcome to a special edition of Could Be Pretty Cool News. This year has brought its share of challenges for creative professionals and entrepreneurs. Funding shifts, resource cuts, and broader socio-political changes have left many of us asking, where do I go from here? And as we head into the holiday season, those questions can feel even heavier. So today, we're joined by Aliya Pasik, Director of the Addiction Medicine Program at the Rochester Center for Behavioral Medicine in Michigan, and author of the Sobriety Manual. Aliya brings over a decade of expertise in addiction and psychiatry, and she's here to share practical, science-backed guidance for creatives who might be wondering how to find their footing right now. Whether you're navigating sobriety, questioning your relationship with substances or behaviors, or simply looking for strategies to protect your mental health during stressful times, this conversation is for you. Take care of yourself. Hello, everyone. So as you all know, here at Could Be Pretty Cool, we are all about empowering artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, innovators to be able to find fulfilling careers in what it is that they love to do the most. We're always talking about, this is how you monetize this, or figure out a way to grow your audience or your revenue. And yes, that is important. But this particular year, for a lot of us, especially folks who are working in creative spaces, who are growing businesses, have experienced some rather, I'll just say, interesting things related to how we are able to fund our work, how we are able to find opportunities. And for a lot of us, this has been a rather trying time. And so we are so fortunate to have on the program today Aliya Pasik, who is the current director of the Addiction Medicine Program at the Rochester Center for Behavioral Medicine in Michigan. And we wanted to have Aliya's expertise on the program today as a service to the community for folks who may be wondering, like, okay, where's my head right now? What is happening? I need some guidance on how to, especially as we're approaching the holiday season, maybe find some footing and some advice on how to handle some of the challenges that have been upon us this year. So, Aliya, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey. I appreciate it, and I'm happy to share some of my wisdom from my decade plus of experience in the addiction and psychiatry space.
Amazing, amazing. And I was able to get a copy of Aliya's book, The Sobriety Manual. And actually, I would love to share just a brief snippet that sort of spoke to me. And in the book, you say, when we talk about what really matters, the quickest knee-jerk response that people usually give centers around getting things done, being productive, or financial security. Those listening might be like, oh yeah, that's what you're always telling us to do, Casey. But so many people are losing sight of the fact that none of those things define us as human beings. And so I would love to start there. What inspired you to write this book? And even just that little snippet was like, oh, that is a powerful lesson. But how do you see the lessons in the book applying specifically to artists and entrepreneurs?
I think one of the most core factors that makes us whole is our self-esteem. And people have lost sight of what makes us special. Consumerism has told us that if we aren't doing 50 things in a day, driving a nice car, and accomplishing everything on the checklist, that we're somehow less than. But in my book, I talk about if you were forced to choose a best friend, one of them is holding up a sign with how much money they make in the car that they drive, and the other is holding up a sign saying, I'll show up for you, I care about you, and I'll listen, and I'll be there when you need me. I can tell you who you would pick, because that's the option that you place more value on. But why not value that in yourself? And the patients that I've been working with over the last decade plus of my years in expertise, they always pick the kinder individual. And in my experience, they are the kinder individual. A lot of people who face addiction are sensitive. They're sensitive to the world around us. They're sensitive to each other. They're sensitive to substances. They're sensitive to politics. And all of these things can combine together and create a feeling of fear and self-loathing. Ads are designed to keep us unhappy in our current state so that we spend more money. But we can't just devalue ourselves like that. We've got to be the person that we choose. And we often are, but then we need to learn how to place the value on that. Of course, we need to do enough to earn our keep. And artists and entrepreneurs and innovators are always doing more than they have to. But what are they placing that value on? Is it getting it done, or the value they bring within their pieces and in their craft? So I think that's a really important aspect of recognizing what defines your self-esteem, because at its core, when that happy, healthy, whole individual sees themselves as one unit, there's no room to allow self-medicating in, which is really what addiction is. It's a desire to numb pain. But what people don't realize is there's an awful lot of collateral damage because you're also numbing joy. So I think it's very important to learn how to value yourself so that you can appreciate the world around you. The more self-confident we are, the less sensitive we get, and those walls are firmer and tighter and boundaries are better.
Let's talk about the self-medicating piece for a moment. Sometimes when you are in the midst of whatever it is you're trying to do, building my company, finishing my project, fulfilling this obligation, it isn't always easy to see that, oh, I might also be leaning into some behaviors or some coping mechanisms that are not exactly healthy. And so could you tell us a little bit more about how can people start to perhaps see or realize that, oh, I might not be making the best choices for myself. I might be self-medicating. I think some people think, oh, addiction is I'm on heroin. But like, what can this look like for people who may not see that they are in it?
I have developed a very simple get real system for checking in with yourself. And I call it the baked potato test. If someone places a nice baked potato before you, sour cream, bacon, cheese, chances are you won't turn it down. But I don't know many people that would wake up and think about the next baked potato they're going to have. Are you going to get arrested for a baked potato? Are you going to jeopardize your relationships for a baked potato? If you're thinking about your substance or behavior, because there can be gambling and sex addiction too in the mix, then you have a problem. You're dealing with an addiction. So the baked potato test, it's not very scientific, but most people know how much they think about a baked potato. And unless your mom, my mom, that is, then the baked potato test will really check out for you. Some people really like baked potatoes, but that's not the majority of people who would wake up thinking about one.
Oh, nothing wrong with a good baked potato. It's interesting as at this particular time, we're heading into the holiday season, which can add in its own auxiliary stressors, particularly for people who are maybe heads of household, or they have families, or they have obligations. And this time can bring a lot of joy, but it can also bring a lot of opportunities for finding that release. People are drinking more, people are out more. How is it possible that the holidays can actually amplify addictive behaviors? And what are some practical strategies for, I guess, anyone in general, but specifically artists, entrepreneurs during this particular season to stay grounded?
I think it's a little bit different for our artists and entrepreneurs because I think that staying connected to your truest self is the way to stay on track. And if you take pride in your creations and focus your energy on that's better. But people fall into pitfalls during the holidays for two ends of the spectrum, either grief, sadness, and the desire to numb it, or the thought that celebration isn't a celebration without substance. So on both ends of the spectrum, people have to have a deep awareness. Empty seats at a holiday table are a very serious problem for our older artists, innovators, entrepreneurs who are staring at empty seats at the table because they're suffering from grief. And now, when you are in that position, you've got to reach out to others and stay strong. Stay committed to your craft and be creating. When you're creating, you're not drinking. And you also have to really hold on to the thought of wanting to create new memories. So whether you're on the sad end of the spectrum or you think that you can't have a celebration without a substance, then you have to realize that in either circumstance, you've eliminated the ability to make new memories. Staying trapped in substance means no new memories. However, I feel it forcefully carves out plenty of space for new PTSD to be made. So I want people to really focus on this year. Am I going to make memories or am I going to make trauma? Because substance carves out plenty of space for trauma, but eliminates any possibility for making new memories. And I think the holidays should be a time of togetherness. And if it's important to a person, their faith. And the holidays are really about celebrating the season. And if people can focus on that and draw into their faith, or just their love of one another, if that isn't something that is where a person is at the moment, because people can come to their faith at all spaces and places and times, and it's highly variable. But one thing we can believe in is coming together and working with one another. And I think that if you are on the celebration end of things, get a sober buddy. When you have that accountability, like a gym buddy, you may not show up to the gym at 6 a.m., but your chances go up if you've got a buddy waiting there for you. And the same is with sobriety around the holidays. If you've got another person or people there who are willing to say, hey, I'll go sober with you, that'll definitely help because it adds that extra layer of accountability. And accountability is good.
So what I'm hearing is that it's important to potentially find a partner or a community member or folks that you can have rally around you during this time.
I think that's always the answer. More support is better. You've heard the expression, it takes a village. In addiction and psychiatry and mental health, it absolutely takes a village. And artists can be more sensitive. People who create have that connection with the divine, and they feel everything a little bit more intensely, joy and pain. But just remember, if you're numbing the pain, you're also numbing the joy. So it's really important to focus on the things that make you feel good. And if that's creating, then stick to your creation. Set time apart to do that. In the beginning of my education as an addiction specialist, I learned from patients very quickly that if they had three things at once, they had a problem in early sobriety: time, money, and transportation. So we're always going to hope that you have money and transportation. Those are basic needs. But time, that's the manipulatable factor. So if you can spend that time creating and then being with others and doing things that make you feel positive, and doing acts of kindness can be all that it takes to just feel better about yourself. Some of the most depressed patients that I've worked with have been jealous of others and incapable of being happy for someone else. So if this identifies you in any way, the sooner you can be happy for others, the sooner you'll get to feel happiness yourself. And that's something that I have learned from a decade plus of treating patients and working with all different kinds of people. Being kind makes you happier.
I love that. We hear all the time, gratitude. I need to feel gratitude. And I would love to know a little bit further. We've been talking about self-medicating and substance disorders. So for folks who may not necessarily have issues with substances, you mentioned there are other things that can be addictive behaviors. And so I was wondering, for people who are in those situations, what are some other tips as far as protecting their mental health without feeling guilty? Because yes, I want to feel happy for people, but as a human, sometimes I'm jealous of the person who got the big grant that I really needed to sustain my practice. Or I want to be there for community, but I just can't today. I need to just take some time to myself. And sometimes when we know what we're supposed to be doing, we feel guilty for not doing it. Any tips for folks who may be in that space?
Absolutely. Give yourself balance. If you're working too hard, then you're experiencing burnout and you can't give. What I hear a lot of what you've described is a person who's been working way too hard and too long to continue. And I think that the sustainability of all of it comes from self-care. Artists, entrepreneurs, people who have to literally sing for their supper feel like they can't take breaks. But if you don't, the quality of your work will suffer. When I have patients like this, and there are many very ambitious people, especially in the artist and entrepreneur space, I tell them, if you're going to the ER because you're having chest pain, do you want to see the doctor who's in his 26th hour on shift? Or would you prefer to see the doctor that just came back from a golf vacation? Again, the same rules apply to you. Your quality of work will be much better if you take breaks. And taking breaks shouldn't be something that make you feel guilty. It should be something that makes you feel strong. And those breaks have to be self-nourishing, whether it's throwing on a podcast and unwinding with someone else's conversations, thoughts, and ideas. If it's playing music that inspires you or lifts you up, or putting some thoughts down on paper or painting something beautiful, that's the way to self-charge, to recharge. If it doesn't refuel you, then it's not self-care.
That's really powerful. That is.
And it doesn't always take money. You can unwind without having to spend money. You don't have to go to a concert, a show, or a fancy restaurant to unwind. Taking time for yourself can mean playing music that makes you happy, playing with your pets, going for a walk outside, being in nature. In my strategy, I have a method here for interrupting the cycle of addiction, and I talk about the concept of having two people living inside your head. There's the sober you, which is the real you, that's your name. And then there's what I like to call the addict roommate, someone who's not you, someone who you would never do these things if you were sober. And everybody can agree there's an alter ego living there inside your head. So if you can really tease out those two and separate it and identify when the roommate is speaking and the roommate says something like, I've had a hard day, I deserve this, I need a break, I'll feel better. But you're in the fight of your life and it's the fight for your life. So I have people take the sheet of paper, the workbooks that's in the back here, and you put down your name on the right-hand column because sober you is always right. And then you've got to name that addict roommate of yours. It can be a middle name or a drinking name back in the day or anything that isn't really you. And then you have to write down what that person is saying. And then you've got to correct it on the spot. So the truth of that is, no, I will not feel better. I will feel worse. And then there's also a column C. And this is exactly the type of things that we've been discussing right now. Column C, the third column, that's what you do to avoid relapse. So if you get a craving, set a timer. My method involves getting a craving, you set a timer, 5 minutes. Scientifically, cravings don't last longer than 5 minutes. So if you can get yourself busy with something else, your odds of relapse go way, way down. So column C items, put on your favorite song and sing along. That'll raise some dopamine. Go for a walk. That'll raise some endorphins. Get a hug from someone you trust. Also endorphins. Everything that's going on here is occurring on the chemical level in your brain. But that doesn't mean you can't control those chemicals. And I want people to know that you are highly powerful. Thoughts become words, words become actions, and actions become life. So if you can think it, you can achieve it. And column C, that's your self-care. And I think when patients or people dealing with this really identify that there are two people, the one that's really them, the sober them, and then this other person, it is so much easier to say no to someone else than it is to say no to yourself. And part of that method entails writing down on a scale of 0 to 10 at the end of each day, next to the day and date, 0 to 10, what were your cravings? And what you'll see over time is that there's a pattern that emerges. what makes you crave. Some people realize fighting with a spouse, that can certainly trigger it. Having a bad day at work, stress on the job, stress from children not cooperating the way parents hope, kids getting into trouble. All kinds of things can precipitate that. But it really takes self-care, self-respect, and self-compassion to pull yourself back. When you realize that you're worth more than the pain that addiction brings, you can resurrect yourself from the ashes.
I think that so many of the tips and advice that you just shared from your book, The Sobriety Manual, could be incredibly helpful to people as just like a really good resource, even for folks who need to just sit down and start thinking about these things. And speaking of resources, this particular year in our US social political climate, there has been a shift in resources away from a lot of things like research funding, funding that a lot of small business owners or artists relied on to be able to sustain their sort of financial stability. And as we are heading into a new year, we don't really know what life is going to look like for a little bit. And so I'm curious for your take on how we've been talking a lot about the person and like the immediate community and the things that a person is encountering on the day to day. How can this sort of larger, broader climate potentially affect the mental health of an artist, entrepreneur, someone who's just like trying to get through day to day? I know for myself, I have had to limit just like doom scrolling the news. I want to stay aware. I want to know what's happening. But I also just feel like this is this is over. Like, what do we do? Like, just to go back to, I guess, the first question, like, how can the broader socio-political climate potentially affect one's mental health?
My general fear is that having these funds cut will make people feel that their craft is devalued. And I think that is something definitely not to hang on to. In fact, at times, I think that funds get cut from things that others are afraid of. Science and research and art pushes limits and it takes us forward. In certain climates, that's not the priority. And it can be frustrating because deep down, we all know that arts, sciences, and research push our society forward. But everything is cyclical and fear can take hold. And I think in this current climate, fear is really the predominant emotion, which is why a lot more doors are being closed. When fear comes down, doors open. So what we can do in the meantime is huddle together and amplify our voice and make sure that the tides do turn as they always do. It's cyclical, but until we unite and really come together as a group of people who want this and who can make our voices louder, that fear will subside and we'll get it back. But it's really important to remember this. It's all cyclical and it will come back. There's a swing, there's a pendulum. People get so scared, they vote for something and they bring it in. And they don't realize that fear isn't what really drives us forward. It tends to hold us back. So then the reaction to that will be a wide swing. But you use the word I use all the time, doom scrolling. And I tell people, don't drink from that. I don't worry that people are not going to know what's going on. The news travels so fast. I wish I could bury my head in the sand, but I can't. So I don't think that fear that people won't know what's going on is real. I think that the discussions around it and social media and general conversations between people would prohibit you from being able to bury your head in the sand. But what you drink from will definitely poison you. I just wanted to say that I think togetherness is the way to overcome it. Banding together and have your voice heard. Let creativity dominate over fear, because right now, it's a fear dominant over creativity space, and that too shall pass. It all will pass. It's a time of fear now, and the only thing that really overcomes that is love and community. So people who aren't sticking together, people who are isolating, that's the problem that you can correct. If you haven't gone out and talked to other people who share your beliefs and views, then that's the part you're missing out on. Because this isn't an opportunity for divisiveness, it's an opportunity to come together. And I think the group whose voice will be loudest are those who have the most voices in their group.
That's powerful. And I love that. Let creativity override fear.
Well,
Yeah.
creativity is the resolution to fear because it brings out new ideas, and new ideas are what stop the stronghold that people feel when they feel stuck. So creativity is the outlet to fear.
And I think that for a lot of folks who work in creative spaces, we have come up with that, oh, you're an artist, that's cute. What's your real job? And I think remembering that power is something that hopefully will help to motivate folks to be able to hold on throughout this season and all seasons to come. And so I would love to ask, I mean, you've dropped gems and some amazing advice, some amazing resources. If you could leave artists and entrepreneurs with one reminder as we head into this holiday season, this new year of unknown, what would that be?
I think every new year brings a new start, new resolutions, new hopes. And I think that if you couldn't do something one day, that is no representation of what you'll be able to do the next day. And if you haven't been able to get sober yet, tomorrow brings new hope. Don't quit trying. I think it's also really important to address everything that's going on underneath it as well. In the artist and entrepreneur community and those who are most creative, they can also have ADHD, anxiety, depression, panic disorder, and all of these are highly worth treating because without those being treated, the desire to self-medicate goes way up. ADHD at its core is a lack of dopamine in the brain. Dopamine is the opening presence on Christmas morning hormone. So if you don't have enough of that, you're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel low, unmotivated, tired, flat, bored. All of these things can be triggers. And when you lack dopamine, guess what you crave? Dope, which is why treating that is essential. And it doesn't mean treating it with other addictive medications. I think people tend to associate ADHD with Adderall, and that's not always the right choice. There are a lot of different things on the market that can treat ADHD. ADHD is caused by a lack of dopamine and norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is the I want to win the race hormone. So folks with ADHD may not have the get up and go that they wish they had, and that can too lower self-esteem. And the lower your self-esteem, the more you open the door for that addict roommate to come in. Because if you're not talking to yourself, they're talking to you. And you need to silence that voice and recognize that it's them and not you. But norepinephrine is another key ingredient in ADHD. And sometimes when you treat ADHD with a simple medication, and there's even a children's medication out there, which is not a controlled substance, that takes down the urge surfing. And the way that works is just by raising the level of stimulation in the brain. Dopamine is the brain's stimulant. So if you can raise the brain's stimulation with dopamine or norepinephrine, which is another calming stimulant, then that desire to look for something, that seeking, goes away. And then people can just feel more content in themselves. So there are a lot of great medications out there that psychiatrists can prescribe that will get you feeling the way you want to feel without the baggage of a drug or alcohol or behavior. There are a lot of toxic behaviors out there too. And it all can stem from basic disorders and what we call axis 1 disorders. Axis 1 means things like bipolar, ADHD, anxiety, depression. And there are different treatments for all of those that are beautifully sustainable and not habit forming. And I think the key to sustainability is that it doesn't cause an addiction. Any drug that leads to you needing more or lowering your body's natural ability to create something is problematic. Like opiates are so similar to native dope. It signals your brain, I have enough. I don't need to make any more. And then your dopamine gets lower and lower, causing more depression, anxiety, ADHD. And alcohol releases a substance in the brain called GABA, as in gamma aminobutyric acid, GABA, like yo GABA. That's the good stuff. That's the brain's keep calm hormone. So folks who have an anxiety disorder may be drawn to alcohol. They're anxious. They don't feel right. Society is closing in on them. They want to drink. It releases GABA. So you get this immediate relaxation. I had a patient tell me once, I drink because it feels like a flower opening up inside. So that's a person who really had a problem with anxiety. So she got some relief of the anxiety. But what happens when you take all that good GABA and you dump it out, it's like eating a whole bowl of candy. It's great until you've got nothing left. And that's what happens. So with benzodiazepines like Xanax and Valium and alcohol, all these can give you a quick fix, but a way worse rebound, drawing you in for more substance in the future. So correcting these problems in a sustainable way with a prescriber who knows what they're doing can really put an immediate end to a lot of this. I cannot tell you how many patients I've had that said their substance or behavior is not fun. It's just to keep away the misery. But that misery can be corrected with sometimes even something as gentle as a children's medication. So don't lose hope. There are a lot of things out there between talk therapy to help lighten up your trauma. There's something I like to refer my trauma patients to called EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So you work with a therapist who takes you to a mentally safe space, and then you do some tapping or eye movements, and it's like a biohack. And it reprocesses the trauma in the way that simulates REM sleep. So it's something that goes on in the background, yet moves mountains quickly. There is a solution for everything that doesn't involve a substance or a behavior that will cause a rebound. And that's the most important thing for people to know. There's an off-ramp for all of this, many off-ramps, in fact.
Thank you for contextualizing the issues with the science. I think that there are plenty of people who've had that experience of, oh, I'm stressed out, or I just need a drink and calm my nerves. But to kind of get the science behind the why that calms one's nerves, I think is incredibly helpful. So you have been just giving some wonderful science-backed advice for folks perhaps who are in the midst of a sobriety journey, or just maybe at the beginning of realizing, oh, I need to start paying more attention to this or taking some action. For folks who perhaps are on the other end or pushing towards the other end of a sobriety journey, they are currently actively sober, working at it every day, but perhaps are struggling with, I don't know, any of the issues that can be present during this time, if it's trust issues, if it is just dealing with a family who have maybe had to help them through periods of non-sobriety. How or what advice do you have for folks who in this time are trying to handle remaining sober? So that's, of course, what we want and all the issues that surround that.
I can tell you that one of the greatest risks for relapse is past relapse and the feeling that no one thinks the person can do it or that they'll fail. So I think that one of the best things the person can do, the patient themselves, is to invite other people's questions, because the patient themselves often feels, I've done all this hard work and I'm seeing a psychiatrist and I'm taking new medications that I've never taken before. How come this person doesn't see me as their hero for giving this up? But they've got X number of days, weeks, months, or years where they've been on the receiving end of whatever intoxicated behavior that person has displayed. So I think it does require some humility in the patient who is newly sober to really prove your sobriety in a way that invites their questions. If somebody is hiding something, they don't want to talk about it. But if you are newly sober, you should be the most proud of that. Sobriety is like a diamond. If you polish it every day and you're proud of it and you count your days, and you're a lot less likely to give it away than if you see it as a lump of coal. And the only way you can hold on to that is by broadcasting it. The words you speak, you can tell people, I am sober. I invite you to check. You want to see my phone where my location is? I would gladly do that. You want to ask me where I've been? I will gladly do that. You want to see my bank statement to make sure I haven't stopped at the liquor store? I'll gladly do that. If you want to regain trust, you annoy them more than they'll annoy you with what you've been doing. And then they're going to see very quickly that you've got nothing to hide. Being open and honest is your best bet, whether you're in the throes of it, nearing the end of it, or out of it completely. Invite honesty and be honest, because when you have nothing to hide, trust naturally comes back. And my book is an excellent explanation for what goes on in the brain during an addiction. And it takes time to recover. brain rewires from addiction at various phases, and it's pretty much consistent from human to human with not a lot of variability. So when you're dealing with an addiction, the first 30 days are key. And what happens when you drink alcohol or use an opiate, the brain gobbles it up and shoots up these holes, which are receptor sites asking to be filled. Feed me. And that's what a craving is. Certain meds to treat addiction sit in those holes. So the brain kind of thinks it's gotten what it's asked for. But because it's not alcohol or drugs, they turn back into healthy brain tissue. Those medications are available too. People shouldn't fight that and say, oh, I can be sober without it. No, you'll regain trust by taking the meds that will keep you from getting drunk, by taking the meds that will make you sick if you get drunk. If you opt to take these meds, then chances are people will not lack trust in you. So understanding that the brain does rewire at various intervals, and when it does, it makes a last hurrah at 30 days and then another one at 90 days. People can get a really big bump and not know why. Why am I craving all of a sudden? But the voice that comes in, and again, I have to reference that addict roommate comes in and says, it's been 3 months. Of course you have this under control. That's why it's important to identify this voice as somebody other than you, because it's a lot easier to say no to somebody else than it is to say no to yourself. And if your brain is telling you, it's been a while, you can have this, you can say, addict roommate, goodbye, I'm shutting the door on you. And then the brain at 365 days is fully rewired to its pre-addiction state. So a brain that has been marred by drugs and alcohol can heal. Certain things take more of a toll than others. Ecstasy, that can open the floodgates on your serotonin receptors, allowing you to feel all the serotonin at once, which feels great. And then again, you're depleted. This can cause more damage to your serotonin receptors, leading to depression. I've seen hallucinogenics cause permanent damage in a condition called HPPD, hallucinogenic perceptual persisting disorder, where patients continue to trip on the hallucinogen even though they're not currently actively using it because it can remain in cerebrospinal fluid. So these are all things that need to be made aware. But most of the drugs and alcohol that people get involved in, the brain will recover. One of my chapters is, Did I Break My Brain? And I go into more detail about all of that, what you have and haven't done to your body in this process.
I think that's a wonderful reminder also for folks who, at your holiday parties and your holiday celebrations, like, you don't know what someone's going through. So, not, hey, everybody, let's take a shot, or why aren't you drinking? The cocktail is great. Like, making spaces for people to feel safe, to express that, hey, I'm not drinking right now. Or I think that's also something as a community is incredibly important to just support everyone.
That's why
being
communication is key. Communication is key. And I have a lot of patients who plan to bring mocktails to their gatherings. And this is key. I don't have a problem with this at all. There are a lot of now non-alcoholic spirits that can mimic flavors without any of the hardship that comes with the substance itself. And I'm a huge fan of those. Non-alcoholic beer feels the exact same in your hand and going down. And people can and should use these. And sobriety is becoming a lot more cool. There are a ton of mocktails out there. Most fancy restaurants have a mocktail menu. There are options, and you should take advantage of them.
We are heading towards, again, who knows? But the core thing that I'm taking away from this experience, which has been great for me too, personally, I'm team panic disorder, and going into this season myself as an artist and entrepreneur, it is always, oh dear, it's an extra layer of something. And so having this conversation with you was helpful for me. I hope it's helpful for everyone listening. And so if someone is like, oh yeah, I need to dive deeper into this, I want to learn more about your methods and your philosophies, Aliya, where can people find the Sobriety Manual?
The Sobriety Manual is available on Amazon.
Fantastic. And how can people find out more about you?
I have an author page on Amazon. People can read my author page or go on to my clinic website, www.rcbm.net, and that's where you'll find my bio.
Amazing. Thank you so much for offering your guidance and expertise. And everyone listening, have a safe and happy holiday, and we'll catch you the next time.
Great. Thank you. Goodbye.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Until next time, we encourage you to continue nurturing your process. Farewell, and may all of your creative endeavors flourish. Could Be Pretty Cool News is a Could Be Pretty Cool original production. Created, hosted, and executive produced by Casey Lueders. Senior producer is Liz Moore, and supervising sound editor is Trinity Jackson. Our original theme music was composed by Camille Stennis and cover art design by AJ Johnson. To learn more about Could Be Pretty Cool and discover whatever else we're up to, visit us at couldbeprettycool.substack.com. Thank you for listening.